Happy New Year! You're listening to the Coffee and Technology Podcast brought to you by Cropster. I'm your host, Nick Castellano, and I'm here with my co-host, Norbert Niederhauser. Last year, we spoke to so many industry legends and learned about Cropster's beginnings from Norbert. We are stoked to start the new year with a 3-part miniseries called The Founders of Cropster. In part 1, we speak to Andreas Idl, a co-founder and CEO of Cropster GmbH. In his own words, Andreas discusses the beginnings and visionary side of Cropster. Listen and learn about what the future holds for Cropster and the coffee industry. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please subscribe to our channel and give us a follow on social media. All right, yo, Norbert, welcome back, man. After a few weeks of traveling, I'm stoked to be recording again. How's it going?
I know, yeah, I'm excited, Nick. It's good to have you, and I'm excited about our guest today.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I'm stoked for this little mini series we're going to be doing with the founders of Cropster, the story of Cropster, where Cropster's going. It's going to be a lot of fun. And with that, I'd like to welcome a co-founder of Cropster, Andreas Idl. How are you, man? How's it going?
Pretty good. Over here, it's already right dark. We're in the middle of the night, but I'm doing really well. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Sweet, man. I'm stoked. We're stoked to have you here, and we're stoked to get this series going with you. Just really quick, if you could tell our listeners who you are at Cropster, where you're based, and maybe then we'll go into the story of how you got started with Cropster.
So my name is Andreas Idl. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Cropster. I live in Innsbruck, which is in the middle of the Alps in Europe, in Austria. A quite pretty city, I would say. And that's also where our headquarters is.
Cool. No, sweet. So with that, so you're a co-founder. You obviously have a large stake in the company, as does Norbert and the other co-founder, Martin. If you could tell us a little bit about your version of how you got started with Cropster way back when it was in Colombia. We've heard Norbert's story and how he started, which is incredible and amazing and very inspiring. But now I'd like to hear your side of it. How did it all start for you?
If we go very, very far back, it did started when I studied IT and I got to know Norbert at the time. That was a few years before Colombia. It's a few years before Norbert went to Colombia, and even more before I went to Colombia. But after study or writing the master thesis, Norbert went to Colombia and I went to Innsbruck. And I worked here for about 2 years. And in the meanwhile, I have seen Norbert twice, I would say. We kept in touch, and he told me about these nice and interesting things he's doing in Colombia. And at the time, the coffee project was starting, but he was involved in many different projects. And that sounded really exciting to me. At the time, with my IT study completed, I started working as a software developer. And I started in a tiny, tiny company. I was their first employee. And we had to build an online system. And if you're in Austria today, that system has been used for most of the big construction sites like tunnels or bridges to manage all of that thing. And that's actually it was very interesting to build this up and get this opportunity. And I felt like I can create something. And I understood the first time software is a really, really pretty tool set. You can do many things with it, and you can build things out of nothing. And that's the first time I really experienced that. And yeah, I stayed at the company. The company grew. And at the given time, I knew I'm looking for a bit more. I would say a bit more meaning in what I do. And then I heard Norbert again about these opportunities in Colombia. And I felt that sounds right. So I talked to my girlfriend and I said, what about going to Colombia? You could write your master thesis and we move on from here. And well, not immediately, but she did agree. And we quit our apartment and our phone contracts and everything and moved to Colombia. That's how it got started initially.
Wow, you literally picked up and left. I love it. Wait, so what year was this for you?
2006.
2006.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a year before we founded Cropster. Andreas came to Colombia.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So maybe we can move into a little bit now. So you all started in Colombia. Now Norbert's in the US, you're in Austria. There's there's basically two businesses of it. How did the evolution happen of the business going from Colombia and then being established in Austria and the US? How did that all happen?
So at that time, all three of us were in Colombia, and that started to change because by a few reasons. So Martin, the third co-founder, had to complete his master thesis, so he had to go back to university in Austria. And also the deal with my girlfriend, which is my wife today, by the way. So
Congratulations.
we had a deal. Also, she had to complete the master thesis, so we had a deal. I will move back with her, but we weren't sure if we want to go back to Colombia or stay in Austria. That wasn't clear at the time.
Okay.
So there were some factors around why immediately we were a distributed team, like just from the very start, and we were between Colombia and Austria. And over time, we changed from Colombia, Austria to Colombia, USA, Austria. At a very specific time, we were the smallest possible company, being in 3 continents. And because we were 3 people and we were distributed. So we never worked differently. I think we know now how this works for us. We are very used to that, and that is it's a topic since our foundation, right? How do we treat this time difference? Basically, how do we come to conclusion as a team and collaborate?
Nice.
Definitely very interesting to figure that out in the beginning. Like how much do we need to be connected and talk? How often do we need to see each other in person? And again, with Andreas, I have a very long history. We studied together. We we volunteered at the same student organization, and then we went on to do our exchange semester in Poland, where we lived on, minimum square footage for half a year. And I think that was the ultimate test, to me at least. Like, I can work and live with that guy without major conflict for so long. There's something good going on. And I think that was also the decision later to jump into this adventure of Cropsters. You don't know anything when you start a company, but knowing that you do this with the right people goes a very long way. And I don't know, from your perspective, Andreas, how you felt back then, because it was crazy times.
I would say that was the reason why I went to Colombia, because that trust was here, and I knew if Norbert tells me we can do something cool and we will figure it out there, and there is lots meaningful work to do, that's what it will be. And although I had literally no idea how it will be, right? Because, I haven't been there. I haven't seen it. The whole environment of work and research was different, but the trust was here, and that's how it turned out.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Well, I'll start with the question. What is it for you, in your perspective? What does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And I ask you that because it sounds like you really switched gears pretty fast, pretty hard, for good reason. And you dove into a territory in coffee, and specifically coffee, not tech, but you dove into a territory of coffee that you probably, I'm assuming, you weren't familiar with, but you figured it out and you are a part of making something successful. So in your eyes, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur now and then?
At the beginning, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, and I didn't think about these terms at all. I just wanted to do something, but then looking at coffee, I wanted to do something specifically in there. And that became the direction we as a group followed also we did see this opportunity. And for me, that was, in retrospect, that was the thing that we actually, we had this high intrinsic motivation to do something, to create something here, to solve problems, to do something innovative or new. These were really strong magnets, right? They were pulling me. And I think that's still a good motivation to start whatever, any foundation, anything you do that helps you. I wasn't thinking about, we need to grow this into a really big company, we need to become rich or whatever. That was not the motivation. We wanted to create something. And I think that's still what I think of most cool entrepreneurs do, or people I look up to and think, oh, they create something awesome. They create something innovative and changing. And I think that's what creates good companies and great value in the end.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I feel like for my generation especially, that's become even more so important, that there are people and there are leaders that find value in what they're doing, that make impact, versus, like you said, like, you're not thinking about making all this money. I mean, if it's successful, I'm sure that'll come, but there's more purpose in creating something that makes a positive impact on the world, like, Cropster does on the entire coffee industry, right?
Yeah, and I think there is a second aspect that I wasn't aware when we started, and that's endurance. The chances that you have you might have a good idea, but it's not really perfect. That's high, right? So you take this new idea, and this is not the final product. You will need to think about B, C, D, E, F, G, and so forth. And you need endurance to keep focus and take the next loop and next iteration. And I think that was something we did really well in the first years. We tried a lot of things with our customers and functionality, because there was nothing here, right? We couldn't say, oh, let's do it this way and it will work, because there was no proven track for that. And just looking back, we've also thrown away many things in the software that didn't make it. We thought those are awesome ideas, but in fact, they weren't quite.
Oh, they were awesome ideas, but we couldn't make them stick.
Okay, the ideas were awesome. The real world implications, well, were a bit different. You need quite a bit of strength, in my opinion, to throw something away. You've probably invested quite a bit of time and heart. And I think that's part of creating something new. And that's a price you need to pay, and you need to accept that's what ultimately shapes your product in the end. And each iteration that doesn't work will move one option out, and you still have many more. And you will find the one that works. You just need the endurance to get there.
Mind blowing. That's spot on for sure. So kind of switching gears a little bit on the Cropster side. So there's Cropster. We have industry tools for all the different parts of the supply chain. Can you go into a little bit of what maybe Fab Scale is and the association with Cropster, with the association of Cropster there, and then also Beans?
Mm-hmm. Let's start with Fab Scale. Fab Scale is a joint venture with Probat. If you look at Cropster Roast as a product today, we have tools for inventory, production planning, QC, order aggregation, and roasting, right? Automating the roast machine, visualizing a roast. That's not necessarily the tools you would have in a big environment where silos are automated, scales are automated, roast machines are automated, maybe run 24/7. The whole thing there works differently. The one thing that's the same is actually QC. There is a lot of color measurement. There is a lot of also coffee cupping and assessing the roast quality in large-scale enterprises and in specialty. And I actually think there is some area where these both camps would benefit from an exchange, because processes are a bit different, but there is a lot of experience on both sides where each other could learn from it. But FabScale basically is here to build a system for these really large operations. It does a few things, like it has a KPI, an operations KPI sheet, live sheet from your operation to see how things work, how much energy you use, if there's any problems, how much volume you do, and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You get a lot of all your roast profiles, but what you get on top is also a maintenance module. Basically, the software helps you to plan maintenance schedule in your work. Different parts of that machinery need different maintenance, and it helps you that reminding you and helping you to make a schedule out of that. Mm. And FabScale has an integration to our QC tools from Cropster. Again, the roasts come in, you can cup those, you can assess the quality.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, cool. And then what about beans? One of, I would say, Cropster's newest projects?
Yeah, that's very new. We need to go back for beans to last year when COVID started. Yeah, we've all seen what happened, right? Hotels had to close, restaurants had to close, coffee shops had to close, offices closed. And we got quite a few phone calls from our customers having problems, or also didn't know where it's going. Mm-hmm. A lot of uncertainty was here. And we've realized at that point that quite some of them didn't sell online.
Okay.
And we came together and we just said, what can we do? I mean, what can we do, right? That's the question. Again, what solution can we make? How can we help people? And we thought and we brainstormed, and then the idea came up, why don't we provide a free shop during the pandemic so people can put their coffees online and reconnect to their customer while the coffee shop is closed, for example. We've launched that at no cost. We invited everyone. We did set up quite a few shops, actually. And we helped a few to bring a part of their business online.
Okay.
And that came to the point where we fixed the problem, but we created a new one by that, because we suddenly had to maintain shops.
Yeah.
And maintaining a production software versus maintaining a web shop system it's just different. It's software, but it's different. And yeah, we were looking into options. What do we do with it? How well, obviously it solves the problem, but we are not the right company to do that. Mm-hmm. We do something else. And at the time, we started to communicate with a company in Poland, Kawa.pl, and they ran a platform in Poland where roasters could also post their coffee on a B2B marketplace. And besides coffee, they also have espresso machines on it, and grinders and filter brews. I would say everything a coffee shop needs to operate. Okay. Or many parts of that. So we were starting to explore that option and looking at it. And we decided at the end of the year that we will merge those two things. So the Cropster shops that we had during the pandemic and that marketplace. And we will create a new company out of that with two offerings. First, B2B wholesale shops for coffee roasters as one thing. And the second thing is a B2B marketplace between coffee shops and roasters. So depending in which market you are as a roaster, you can either go with wholesale shops and have your private sales channel, or you can post coffees on the marketplace. There is some countries and regions where that's the norm. And others, you have more wholesale long-term relationships, depending where you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Beans, and Beans started beginning of this year to operate. They are hosting all our shops now.
Yeah.
That was done, and they are launching the marketplace soon. Actually, that's it.
Nice. Okay. Cool. So I mean, so with all these different, basically moving parts now, it takes me back to my original question again. I'm wondering, with putting it all together, with having an Austrian company, a US company, FabScale as a joint venture, now Beans, With all these different moving parts, what are some of the challenges and opportunities as a CEO and in Norbert's role as well as CEO in the US? Yeah, what are some of the challenges and opportunities that come with having all these moving parts running at the same time?
Yeah, so the JVs are different. They are their own unit. So they have their own CEO and they have their own developing team and sales team.
Okay.
So operationally, we don't overlap.
Okay.
So if you think about it, we have Cropster as our company, and we have these small bubbles on the side that we share with others that do something very specific. Because if you look at all of those topics, it's a very broad range from running shops and operating huge coffee plants and developing a cupping app. That's a bit of a stretch, and we needed to separate that out.
Okay.
That's why these additional opportunities where we think that are beneficial to the supply chain and the coffee industry, they ought to happen for that. We need that benefit in industry, but we didn't mingle it up basically with our standard operations.
No, cool. I want to talk about your relationships as business partners as well, but business partners on two other parts of the world, like 9-hour time zone difference. What is that specifically like? I mean, what are some of the challenges other than time zone? What are some of the opportunities? Does it help that you've known each other prior to starting Cropster? I mean, what's the relationship like, and what's the dynamic like within the company?
Well, there is many points to that. I think it helped that Norbert and I knew each other and Martin for many, many years. That helps us understand with less information, basically. We know each other. I think that's a pro. I think the main advantage of running this way is we can connect better with our customers. So we have a core value in this company. It's being customer focused. Mm-hmm. And this is true in our sales team, in our communication, in information that we give out. It's true in our support and our customer success teams. And being close to the customer requires you somehow overlapping his or her time zone. That's a very basic thing, right? So running the whole show from Austria or US wouldn't fly in specific parts of the world. The second thing also, we are culturally not so uniform. Even the US in itself is not so uniform, in my opinion, and Europe isn't either. And we have, for example, a good market for us, or a very strong market, is the Middle East, which is culturally also different from these regions. So we need to think about how can we be close to the customer, deliver a good service, and a service they can always rely on. And that helps us if we are closer in terms of time zone, in terms of culture and language, if people can reach us on the telephone or however they want, and be close. I think that was important. The third thing in that is Cropster has a very international team. I went through it yesterday. I think it's about 19 nationalities in close to 60 people. Wow. It's very mixed, right? I think that brings its own bag of challenges in terms of culture and communication, but it has this huge pro. If you think that a team with different cultures and background and languages, they can experience and they can explain problems in different angles, which you can't coming from a single culture and a single language. I think we as a team, we are on average very rich on that because we can afford to do that. That creates sometimes maybe misunderstandings, but it has this huge opportunity to think through it from different aspects and come to a better conclusion and a more holistic solution. Yeah. And I think that's a very big asset of working in the way that we do.
Yeah.
I think it reminds me a little bit of what's very popular 15 years ago, like crowdsourcing, or getting to the better decisions. There were books written about this, how to get to the to the best solution, right? And the best solution always comes from running it through different angles, different aspects, different experiences, and we have that in our company. But it also shows that we are interested in those type of things, that we don't feel. First of all, we run a global business, so we have to see the world a little bit differently. But also that's what we wanted. That's what we set out to. We could have made this a US company, right? It's like, well, this is a good market. It would still probably work. It's a big enough market. But we wanted to be inclusive and have the whole supply chain, everybody working in coffee as part of this. And that's, I think, what makes it so inspiring and so interesting.
Enjoying this episode of the Coffee and Technology Podcast? This podcast would not be possible without the support of Cropster. Whether it's tracking your harvest yields, roastery and inventory management, or simply tracking brew recipes, Cropster Origin, Cropster Roast, and Cropster Cafe can help streamline your workflows and help you operate more efficiently. So Norbert, then I'm curious now on your end, though, on the flip side, you having now spent so much time in the US, and obviously in Colombia before that, how has your living experience in those two countries now kind of shaped or changed the way shaped or viewed the way your dynamic is at Cropster now? Do you feel more American in your business practices, or still very Austrian, or still very Colombian? How does that work out? And how does that work out between you and Andreas?
I think it's a mixture. There's, it's not I changed my personality from A to B. It's more like my personality as a whole, or the way I see things has evolved. And it includes elements I've seen in Colombia. And of course, when I'm there, I relate to those things even more. It's like, oh yeah, of course, things are like down there. Decisions are taken one day at a time. There's not like the planning is different, right? When I'm in Austria, there you're thinking a little bit about the long term. There's a little bit more deeper thinking of how this will all affect the future. And I think the US might be somewhere in the middle, where there's a lot of opportunities here. A lot of people don't need to know the 100% effects of what they're doing today. They're more like, well, they're more willing and open to try it out. And I appreciate that so much, right? That was one of the success factors of Cropster, having US customers who were saying, yes, sign me up, I will try it. Because we had no proof. There was no history. There was nothing we could say, yeah, this will make your company 10 times better. There's no data, right? We only had a gut feeling, and we had industry experts who were pointing towards that, but not actual numbers. And when the Germans and the Austrians asked for numbers, it's like, what are the numbers? It's like, we don't have. But the US was like, sign me up. I try it. And if I like it, I keep it. And if I don't like it, I send it back, right? That's the undo culture, or the you can always change culture. And that's awesome, especially for new things. And that's why the US is a fantastic market for new products. And once we had the data, and once we had those initial successes, it was much easier to go to Europe and say, look, those companies are successful, and they give us that feedback. And then, so we found the first movers. We found the first companies who were like, yeah, I want to try this too.
Yeah.
What Norbert really wants to say is he's still very Austrian. His room heating really high.
Oh my gosh.
As he changes to AC cooling, he's not really changed.
That will never change. When I was in Austria last week, or 2 weeks ago, every room I walked into was like sweating bricks. I don't know what was going on.
It's the sound, the sauna dynamic, yeah.
No, I mean, so Andreas, really quick too on that point though. Have you found yourself maybe accepting or implementing some of the like American business culture practices into your operation or work, or are you still very much Austrian to the core?
No, I think I've changed in that regards a lot.
Okay.
But I think that's also only true if you look back when we founded Cropster, right? I think it's more similar today overall. If I think about opportunities, I think American. If I think about the spending, I think Austrian probably. So I'm on the safe side there. No, but I really think about like that. My time in Colombia gave me experiences which I couldn't have had. Being or working in the US did the same thing, and also being in various places in Europe and visiting several countries in Asia, it gave me new perspectives and things I can do and think. And I think that's the richness of the world you can explore, and then some things you can learn and apply. And because if you're in one place, you're not able to see that, and or it's very hard. And here you get them for free.
And it's the benefit of having Andreas in Austria and me here to constantly align. Like we constantly talk, we constantly work on projects, on like what's next in the company. And I usually see it from maybe a little bit more the US perspective. And then Andreas might see it a little bit more from the European perspective, or we both know about each other's markets and perspectives, but sometimes don't have it 100% present. So it sometimes Andreas comes to me and reminds me of like, no, but in the US, you might think about this, or I might do vice versa, because we know both and we are constantly reminded and emerged. And I think that's a beautiful thing to have. And we don't rely only on sales partners or external sources. And again, this relates back to trust and to skin in the game. So there's a lot of base trust we have anyway. That's why we have 2-3 hours in the morning we can talk, and not every day, but sometimes. But the rest, the other 6-7 hours I spend alone, right? And we take our decisions, and the same with Andreas, and we know we're doing the right thing, basically. So that's the trust. And then it's also the skin in the game. To me, it is also important that Austria is successful. This is not only having Cropster Inc. in the US being the only success story, right? It's not about a egocentric decision making. We have to have everybody in mind and everybody's benefit. And ultimately that is super important in a company anyway, and especially in a mid-sized company doing very specific a specific product. So I think that makes us stronger.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's awesome. So before we shift gears and get into now like the future of Cropster and the vision of Cropster, I think would be a cool segue is if maybe you can go into go back to the foundings of Cropster again, and because from my understanding, Cropster originally set out to focus and make an impact on coffee producers, but now grew into well, we have obviously our roast product that's a big focus of Cropster. But how did what happened in between as to becoming a very roast focused product, but now, and then we'll get into it, what Cropster is going to be based off of that.
That's a tricky set of questions, dude.
This is a challenging podcast. It's supposed to be.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't prepare for that mentally. But let's face it then. All right. No, we started out, and our idea was our first software version was towards producers.
Okay.
But our first idea was to improve the whole supply chain.
Okay.
To help everyone to increase their quality and thus make a better living of what they're doing and make them more successful.
Yeah.
That thing is still untouched. That's where we are going.
Okay.
And that's then the iterative thing. We started with producers, and we were still in Colombia at the time. We had a lot of NGO contacts and research center contacts and people in the field. And it made sense from that perspective. We had a market access. And just one thing to remember, we incorporated January 1st, 2018. It was in the middle of the financial crisis. So investors going in tech in a developing country in from supply chain like feedback, they weren't too eager about it. So there was a lot of things. Everything seems risky at the time, I would say. And so we started out, and that was our market access. And it did work to some extent. We had quite success with some rollouts, but we didn't get further from there. But we were working on a second thing at the same time, and that was looking at, can we help coffee roasters to manage the green coffee, their coffee buying and quality control, cupping, green grading, etc. And because we knew everybody's doing that, right? Also, our producers did it. And we built that out, and we pitched it to roasters, and to very few, this was interesting. We got feedback that is interesting. So we added functions, and we added things that then again, some worked, some didn't work. And our first customer, Intelligentsia Coffee, they had a tool attached to their Gotthard machines to show a roast curve. But it could only save, I think, an Excel file or something, or I don't know, something like that, or a CSV file, right? So it's just a list of numbers. And we've built an uploader for that. Actually, that was here, and that was our first roast compare functionality.
Nice.
And they liked that, but obviously it was still a manual upload and stuff. And they said, no, we needed more automatic, because, when you're at the roast machine, you're not here to press an extra 70 buttons every now and then. You don't have the time and capacity to do that. And so we decided to look into how can we actually access those sensors in the machine. We've ordered hardware. We tried a few things. We pretty fast actually got to the data bridge that we use today, to that board. The drivers worked really well, and the software and the hardware. But funnily, they actually didn't have a casing for it, and it's electronics, right? You don't want it dirty or stuff on it. It's, that's why these things have cases. But they didn't sell a case. And that was at the time where 3D printing was not yet such a thing. And making a mold for a prototype was out of discussion. That was like a crazy investment. And we didn't know what to do. And first we took a few iPod cases and drilled holes in it and put on the bridge. And after that, we ran out, and we've built a case out of Lego.
Nice.
So we ordered Lego blocks, the right ones. Norbert did a drawing of it and a plan. We ordered that. We've built the cases that exactly fit that electronic circuit board, allowed the USB wire to go in and the sensors. And that's what we shipped out. And that was cool because we didn't need a mold. We could modify it. We had a case, and it was super duper robust, because on Lego you can stand, right? It's no problem.
Yeah.
And a few of those are still working. I've just recently seen a photo. That was a good solution. And I think I'm sometimes I'm proud about this, because we just wanted that thing to work. We were super determined, and we needed the quickest working MVP possible to get that thing done, because we needed to figure out if our software works. And that's that bridge. And that's why the case was like priority 250. So we did that, and it worked out. That became successful, and we got our case in Plexi actually first, now the black one. But that allowed us to ship the software really quickly. And this software, the Roasting RI first version, it already integrated with our green inventory. So you had actual green inventory, and it uploaded every batch automatically and had a roast compare. And that suddenly unlocked so many features because you had that inventory automatic, you could cup roasts, you had all the data in a place that tied the things together.
Yep.
And that became the success factor. But that was, one iteration after each other. And it wasn't plan A, but it was then plan X probably. And that helped everything else to work.
No, that's awesome. So, you said the word all tied together. So fast forward now 2021, and now we have 3 new products established and still coming: Origin, Cafe, and e-commerce. Can you touch on those products a little bit?
Let's start with e-commerce. So e-commerce is a roast package that allows you to aggregate incoming orders from online sources mainly, like a Shopify or a WooCommerce. But it also comes with a B2B wholesale shop bundled from the Beans platform. So with the Cropster subscription, you get a free-to-use shop on top. That's the main thing what e-commerce does today. These aggregated orders are then aggregated to a production plan. You can schedule your batches on the roast machine, and we will future extend that functionality with additional inventory functions and packaging functions, etc. Our goal for roast as a product is to really cover all the processes between green samples till the roasted product. And that's what e-commerce is. It's already available on our platform, mainly for order to roast organized roasters. We have a few users, so we have that, but we didn't do the big rollout yet, so that's upcoming. Then we have Cafe. Cafe is a tool for coffee shops to control their consistency in production, to help them with quality control. And we've also built in a task manager that allows them to plan things like cleaning the machine, maintaining things, checking inventory and stuff like that.
Nice.
It's that is a standalone product. You can run it in one shop or in many shops, and you can share data among the shops. You can report it centrally. So the managers have their functions and the baristas have their functions. That is launched on the Cropster service, and that will be launched beginning of the year. And we will launch with an espresso machine manufacturer who made their machines connectable to our system.
Nice.
So that's that step. And we have our product Origin, which we have ever since. And Origin has more functionality today than it did at the time. So we still have the QC lab for green coffee. We have things for milling. We have a functionality where users can accept the coffee at the washing stations or the acopio, or depending where you are, right? In parchment, in cherry, and you can assign specific recipes to that, what you want to do with the received harvest. So that's our tools. We will look further to all of them are working standalone. That means if somebody just wants to use Origin, they can. If they have a roastery, which now more and more producers do, they can run both in one. Same is true for roast and cafe. And we will work further out to integrate these products to even leverage more benefit for everyone with exchanging data. It's a very, very exciting next year. Exciting time.
2022
lots
is
of
going to
big
be
releases.
Yeah, 2020 is going to be awesome.
Stay tuned.
So yeah, the products, they do some amazing things. There's some amazing features. They're super beneficial to anybody in the coffee supply chain. But on a higher level, on a more general meaning, like what do all these products now for every part of the supply chain mean for the industry, and what does it mean for Cropster? Or in other words, how do these products for every part of the supply chain elevate Cropster's presence and reputability in the coffee industry? And Norbert, please chime in as well.
I mean, it just continues our vision we always had. We wanted a connected supply chain, and that is extremely important. We come from specialty coffee. We saw at the research center that specialty can be an answer to help coffee farmers get their products sold for fair prices. And again, once you work with quality, once you have specialty, it needs to be treated. The product needs to be treated specifically in each step of the supply chain. You cannot mix it in just the way you want. You cannot roast it or process it in the way you want. You always need to be very careful, right? To have that specific specialty aspect in the supply chain, which is either the intrinsic quality, which most people understand best. So preserve the taste, right? From production to roasting to cafe. So it now goes all through. And then the same goes for traceability. If you talk about, you want to know where your product comes from, if it was produced in a fair and transparent way, organic, and. So all those are quality aspects. And now with all those connected tools and more tools we provide, we're closer to that vision and mission we set out 15 years ago. It's at the same time, it's not done, right? And that's also exciting. There's still more to come. There's still more to be done, because changing the world or solving a problem with just 3 people in the beginning and now 60 is still a big task. But we are super excited about that, and we are ready, I think, for those next steps. So I don't know. That's at least from my end, how I see the next year and the future coming.
Something what I appreciate in coffee a lot is, and sorry guys, Nick and Norbert told me don't say that. But I think coffee is very complex. And I find this fascinating. And we know that from a chemistry point of view in terms of what flavors it can do. And if you think about how many times the coffee is touched from picking it till it's brewed and chemically modified, and so many things happen, even roasting alone is such a complex set of processes, basically. Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. And I think that's the thing, even in the 21st century, coffee in some parts is still, it's keeping a few secrets, right? We still struggle to get the best quality out that's possible, and that's something we want. And then it's also so international, it's so connecting. It's even connecting if you serve a coffee to a person. That's a very kind thing, right? It's a very personal connection. But it's also connecting before that. I think coffee unites it. It's a very global industry. It's a global big process. It's a global product, and it's very complex in itself. Yeah. And that, I think, is a thing if at the same time we want to keep the quality up, because that's what our industry is here for, to have a high standard quality. With our tools, we can help getting there. And with these new initiatives with cafe and also production planning, stuff like that helps to run a coffee roastery better. It helps that the coffee shop runs better. They can control their process. That means they can improve their process. And over time, they will become better on average. And that will become, by this, the industry becomes better. The whole supply chain becomes better. And we see this as a way that the whole supply chain with everyone in it will be more successful by that. Mm-hmm. And I think that lies in the complexity of coffee, to make the point. And that's why I think our tools help with that.
Yeah. Maybe tech will probably allow us to finally reach the perfect cup of coffee that we're always searching for.
Yeah, exactly. And before we retire, right?
I'm 40, by the way. I still have way to go.
And we'll still need some time. just one thing when Andreas said about that, the connecting part of everything, and that links us back to the Austrian culture. I think the Viennese coffee house culture is quite known, and that comes from a history where Austria is a very small country, so that our powers do not lie necessarily in huge numbers, right? But the diplomacy and being in the heart of Europe, that's something specific to Austria. So there's a specific diplomat school, for example, and Vienna was a place where people from all over Europe met and agreed to certain things, and there was a lot of trade going through. And I think the coffee house comes a little bit from that, or has something to do with that. When I grew up, and I didn't even drink coffee at that time, the saying "let's have a coffee" was absolutely something normal. Going with someone and have a conversation, that's what it meant. Not necessarily having the drink, but it was not said, "Hey, let's go for a drink." We would always say specifically, "Let's go for a coffee," even if we would not drink coffee. But the coffee was there, right? And it meant, let's have a conversation, let's connect. It's either your first date, or you want to, you're interested in a new friendship, or you have a business proposition, something. That all happens in the coffee house in I would say in Austria and Europe, and also a lot now in the US. When you look at what happens in San Francisco, people, startups, it's not the garage anymore, it's the coffee shop where things happen. And I love it, right? It really says a lot about the power of that specific product, of that specific drink.
Beautiful. That was amazing. Thank you both. Thank you, Andreas, for joining us. I really appreciate your insights. It was amazing to hear you touch on a lot of these topics. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure to be here, and looking forward for your future episodes. Thanks so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Coffee and Technology Podcast. To learn more about Cropster, subscribe to this podcast and be sure to follow us on social media. And for more educational content, be sure to visit cropster.com/learn.